Welcome to the Dr. Tim Stauffer podcast. I'm your host, Sam Meyung. This podcast is dedicated to helping people think deeply about identity, faith, culture, relationships, and more. We hope that you will find our content useful and engaging in designing your values-driven life. Enjoy, and thanks for listening. If you find this podcast helpful, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you're interested in more resources or personal coaching, please visit www.drtimstauffer.com. Tim is a licensed professional clinical counselor and certified executive and life coach. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. For counseling needs, please seek the advice of your licensed mental health provider. Good morning, Tim.
Hi, Sam. Good to see you this morning.
You too.
Merry Christmas. We're just recording this, 3 days? 3 days.
3 days.
3 days
it's
before.
Friday. Christmas is a Monday.
So it's a fantastic time of year. It's kind of a crazy time of year. But Merry Christmas to you and your family. And
likewise.
To those of you who are listening, I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year.
And hopefully this gets released sometime close to Christmas.
Yes. Well, hopefully somewhere early in January. So what do you want to cover today? What should we talk about?
Okay. So Tim, you texted me and said you wanted to talk about how to get what you want. And immediately I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm excited to hear where you want to go with this. But immediately when I think about that question is how to get what you want, my first reaction is like, okay, but how do I know that even what I want is a good thing in the first place? Because oftentimes when I think about wants, I think of them as primarily selfish. Like what I want is what I want. Mm-hmm. And, so is it even a good thing that I pursue that? Does that make sense?
Sure. So I think we can think in terms of wants perhaps as wants and needs as being overlapping concepts. Sure. It's like I want my needs met.
Sure.
And so it's like I want that. I also need it. It's like those are important to me. But I think the concept of the question, we're right at Christmas. Like, I don't know if you struggle with this or not, but when someone says, "What do you want for Christmas?" I kind of get stymied a bit.
Sure.
One, because what I want, you're not going to be able to afford.
Yeah, right.
The things that I would say that I really want are like, I don't have them because I don't have enough to buy them.
Sure.
So there are many of the things that I would put in the category of want that are just their desires, their dreams, their fantasies of sorts. It's like, I would like, I would, if I was able, I would probably sell my motorcycle and upgrade to something different. Do I want it? Kind of, but what I have is okay. Sure. Is great as well. So there's that level of want. When I say that I want dinner and I'm hungry, I have an appetite and I have a desire for food or a need for food, then the question of want gets a little more complicated. It's like, do I want my food for fuel or to help my body heal or to be healthy? Or do I just want my appetite satiated because those Krispy Kremes would give me a pretty nice hit. Sure. And so what do I want? It's like those kinds of, I think the question becomes dicey. So I have this question I ask clients almost every time they come into my office, and it's something along the lines of I frame it differently as at times, but in essence the question boils down to, what do you need today, or what do you want? What do you want to talk about? What do you got? And I don't know how many times across my career I have people come in and say, I hate that question. Oh, I hate it. Like, and I just, not that long ago, someone came to my office and asked me, because there's that damn question again. It's like, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. And what I've discovered is that crystallizing and describing what it is that we want or what it is that we need is a skill or is something that occurs as people get healthy. As the healthier people get, the more able they are more able to identify and ask for or put into words what it is that they need.
Do you feel like that process also helps, like, as they, crystallize or clarify what it is they want and need? Do you feel like that process also helps people filter through whether or not it's a worthy pursuit? Does that make sense? Because I feel like, because it's easy to be controlled by your wants or your appetites, and almost as if it's this exterior thing pulling you along. Does the process of, like, do people often recognize that that's what's happening, or does the process of, like, does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think people come to an increasing awareness of the more times they're asked that question.
Okay.
The more clarity begins to emerge about that if I am able to articulate that well, I will actually begin creating a vision for the direction I actually want to go.
Okay.
And in essence, that's how we bring our appetites and make our appetites our servants rather than being a servant to our appetites.
Okay.
So what our appetites are motivating physical, biological energy that can serve us incredibly well or can shipwreck our lives. And so we don't ever want our appetites to go away. We want our appetites to serve us well. So if I think about it in terms of food and sex as the primary kinds of appetites that we have, it's like my sexual appetite can serve my marriage and serve my life well. It can lead me towards relationship.
Yeah.
Or it can shipwreck my life through consumption and through some sort of much like food can shipwreck our lives. It's like it can provide essential nutrients and essential fuel for our bodies so that we have the energy to have the kind of life we want to have. And so sexual energy is a primary motivating drive that brings people together. And so it's like our sexual appetites are a very, very important part of having meaningful relationships. And so we have to determine what kind of relationship do we have and to what degree can we engage our sexual appetites in that space. And so many times we just try to shut down. If we try to shut down the sexual appetites, well, now we're going to damage our most intimate relationship because that appetite is essential part of that mad pull towards one another. And so in many regards, when we were asking and clarifying what we want, we're saying we want something that has a longer view than what our appetites can offer. Our appetites are just simply in the moment indicators of desire or of passion or of pull towards getting a primary need met, but they don't have they're not connected to a long-term vision. They don't actually get us like what we want. What I want is a satisfying, meaningful marriage. My sexual appetite, if I take all of that energy and I turn it towards my marriage and let that appetite bring me into a healthy relationship. It's like if my sexual appetite is like I want intimacy with my wife. Well, what does that require of me? Well, it's going to require for me to be kind. It's going to require for me to be helpful. It's going to require me to be reciprocal. It's going to require me to adjust the way I live so that it's like that appetite I can use that appetite as a fuel to train me to interact in a way that's really meaningful to my marriage. Or I can just let that appetite shipwreck me and make me into a demanding, consumptive person that just uses and manipulates other people to get my appetite fed.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. It's like the sex drive is it's the same thing. It's like, but it's a question of how is it used? I guess the illustration of fire in the fireplace versus all over the mantle and the walls. Yeah. It's like same fire. It's just, is it in its proper place? And so to get what we want is to clarify and build a vision out very, very thoroughly.
That's good. So, okay. So I feel like you're kind of starting to say this, but how to get what you want? What are some of the things that you're specifically thinking of examples of? Like, hey, what are the things I should want?
That's a great question. I think we have to evaluate with this reality that to want something is to want the consequences of that thing also. It's like, I can't say that I want and then divorce myself from the consequences associated with that want or from that desire. Okay. And so if I say that I want a motorcycle, well, I also have to be willing to take the risks associated with it. I have to be willing to accept the consequences that can flow from that. So I can't pursue my want of a motorcycle and go get one and then divorce myself from the risks involved in riding one. Sure. It's like those have to be held together. So when we are thinking in terms of what do we want, we have to be calculating the long view. Our appetites won't ever calculate the long view. It's just our appetite just needs satiation. So it never calculates the long view. So to get what we want, and this is why I think people really struggle with the question of what do you want, because it infers you need to calculate. And many people don't like to think. They don't like to calculate. They don't like the answers they come through to when they calculate. So when I say I want to eat that, well, that also means that I have to be willing to accept the long view consequence. So when I was 28, 30, I scoffed at eating low carbs, don't eat sugar, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I want to eat what I want to eat when I want to eat it. And I can I'm escaping the long-term consequences until not that long ago, I had my doctor tell me, you know what, you're in the pre-diabetes category. And if you keep this up, you're going there. And I'm like, yeah, I probably am. Cause my brother's 10 years in front of me. And at my age, his pre-diabetes turned into type 2 diabetes. It's like, if I just nurture my appetite, I have to accept. It's almost like it's not like we want it in the sense of I'm desiring type 2 diabetes, but it's kind of like I want the consequence. If I'm going to pursue that, and if we're thoughtful about it, we'll be able to see that long view. Yeah. That's why many people don't save for retirement when they're younger, because they don't have that long view. So it's like they'll say, I want to have a secure retirement, but I don't want to set aside a couple $100 a month now. And so it's like, which do I want? Well, to crystallize and clarify what we want is a really, really important task. And the more we're asked the question in any kind of ongoing way, and we bring ourselves, what I would say, humbly. I think this is what many of my clients would do when they come into the room. They're humbly bringing themselves into an environment with which I'm going to be asked that question regularly. Yeah. And that can be an annoying question. It can be a sense of like, I don't want to have to think it through because my appetites just want what they want. Right. And so don't make me think about the long view. Right. And That's tough. And it's maddening at times, and it's frustrating. And yet, as I've changed my diet a great deal, what I'm finding is that my appetite for sugar has dropped precipitously. It's like as I recognize, you know what, prepackaged, highly processed food with lots of sugar in it, it's what I really want. That's a contradiction. And so it's like, wouldn't it be great to eat that? To some degree, it would probably give me a pleasant hit, but I don't want it in the long view. And that's how we begin to actually get what we want, by creating that clarity of vision. So there's this interesting New Testament story. There's actually, we'll talk about 3 different stories and see if we can't pull them apart to some degree in a helpful way. In Mark 10, the story of Jesus interacting with blind Bartimaeus, Jesus walking with his disciples, and this blind guy is along the road, and he hears about Jesus coming by, and he raises his voice and begins to shout over the crowd, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And he is asking for what he wants. And one of the ways to get what we want is to ask for it. Like, crystallize it and then ask for it. And when we crystallize it and we start to ask for it, we increase the likelihood that we will adjust ourselves to that. And it's like, I think about it, it's like he positioned himself in such a way to put himself into proximity to what he needed and wanted. Mm-hmm. So it's like he took whatever steps were within his power to get what he wanted and what he needed. And he put himself in proximity to Jesus, and his only resource was to shout over the crowd and to annoy people and to be like, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And people were telling him to shut up and just sit down and be quiet. And he, all the more, just have mercy on me. He was asking very specifically for what he wanted. He wanted mercy. He wanted someone to see him, someone to understand and witness his pain, somebody to recognize that he had needs. And so he just asked for it and cried out for it. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the pathway. That's, I think, the most appropriate pathway to get what we want is ask for it. James says that you don't have because you don't ask. Like Jesus said, "Seek and you will find. Knock, the door will be open. Ask, it will be given to you." It's like the theme of asking within the New Testament. I've sometimes said that asking is the rule of the kingdom of God. It's like if we want something, we have to ask for it. Mm-hmm. And we have to ask with the right motives. We have to ask. Sure. We have to ask with a clarity that we have, like, that we actually are asking for what we want. Because sometimes we ask for things, it's not what we want. It's just what we think we want. It's what we desire. It's but we're not really getting at what we want. He was getting at what he wanted with specificity. I want mercy. I want to be seen. I want someone to help me with a condition that leaves me powerless, that leaves me destitute, that leaves me vulnerable. And I want someone to have mercy on me.
What if you ask, but the answer's no? You ask, but then it's not like.
What's interesting in this story is that Bartimaeus did not ask to have his sight restored initially. So he asked for something. So when we ask, asking always implies that we're willing to accept a no. If we are asking and we're not willing to accept a no, we're deceiving ourselves because we're not actually asking. That means we're demanding. And so the moment we're not willing to accept a no, we have left the territory of asking. And so he was saying, have mercy on me. So mercy, by definition, is in essence saying, will you take away from me something that's hurting me, but I don't have any claim. Like if you don't take it away, what I have is not unjust, or it's not like it is what it is. Like I will accept my condition, and mercy is a request, not a demand. And so if Jesus hadn't healed him, he was asking, and he would have accepted a no.
That's really good. I recently had a work meeting that I was supposed to attend, and I had gotten behind on a project that needed to do a paper, and I asked if I could miss the meeting so I could finish the paper. And the response was, no, this is a required work meeting. You should be here. And I remember being so angry about it. But it took me some time to recognize why I was so frustrated about the situation. I was like, I just don't like hearing no. I don't like being told no. And even though it was a completely, legitimate thing, to be told no, you need to be here at this. But you putting the words, I was like, I wasn't ready to accept the no. I thought that I was doing, it felt like a formality to ask. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was going to be fine. So I wasn't actually asking, I was demanding. So, and that's, I think, why I was so frustrated by the situation. Mm-hmm. And at that point it's no, Sam, you weren't actually asking. Mm-hmm. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, we deceive ourselves because we put our demands into question form.
Yeah.
And we do that to each other all the time. It's it's a common, I got in trouble in grade school. Not grade school, it was high school. I had a teacher who I didn't particularly connect with very well. And he asked a question to me in class. He said, Tim, do you want to read this section of the textbook or whatever, something that would be processed in class? And I just looked at him and said, no, I'd rather not. And that was not the right answer.
Right.
And he kicked me out of the class and said, if that's the way you're going to be, then this isn't the place for you. And he kicked me out.
Well, then don't ask me a question.
So I got up and walked out, and I sat in the bathroom the rest of the period until the class was over. And I was like, he wasn't asking me. Yeah. And he should not have asked it in question form then.
Well, you saying that immediately goes, how often do I do that with my boys?
Oh, we do. Yeah, parenting, we do it all the time.
I shouldn't ask the question if I'm not ready for them to say no.
Right.
I need to just tell them, if this is something I need you to do, you have to do this.
Yes, an essential parenting. It's an essential parenting task.
Wow.
Is to learn how, if we ask a question and we put it in that form, we have to be prepared to accept it.
Yeah, because it's not his fault at that point if I ask the question and he doesn't do it or doesn't want to do it. That's
right. And we can say this is a responsibility that you have and you need to do it. And we can do that without being taskmasters or without being mean.
Sure,
it's like, but no, there's an expectation. Son, you need to wash the dishes this evening. It's not, hey, do you want to wash the dishes this evening? No, I don't. Well, you have to anyway. Well, that's a terrible parenting strategy.
It takes you a step further away.
It's like why did you ask me? I mean, you probably experienced this already. You have anybody ever ask you for advice and you give them advice and they immediately just don't do it?
Sure.
And it's like, why'd you ask me? If you knew exactly what you were going to do anyway, don't deceive me into thinking that you want my influence in life and then you won't even accept it and won't even take it. It's like don't bother asking me.
Sure.
And so many times we have this deceptive way of asking, and it's really not asking. And so blind Bartimaeus was asking, and he was willing to accept. If Jesus would not have healed him, it would not have ruined him. His attitude and his disposition prepared him to live with the condition that he had, but he did ask. And Jesus said, then Jesus comes to him and says, what would you like for me to do to you? It's like for you. And it's like, now Jesus is giving him mercy. That question is the answer to his deepest need. I need mercy. Here you go. Here's your mercy. Now that you have mercy, what would you like for me to do for you?
Yeah.
And now he goes to the next level and says, I would like to see. And Jesus says, your faith has healed you. Like, yes, here's your sight. And now he can see. Now he's rejoicing. Now he goes out and he becomes an evangelist and just shares what Jesus did for him.
Mm-hmm.
Contrast that with the story in John 5 of the man at the pool of Bethesda. Here's a man who's an invalid, laying on a mat for 38 years. He's weak. He's anemic. He doesn't have motivation. He's apathetic. The Bible doesn't even give him a name. This is a nameless guy who it's like apathy strips away our identity. It strips away our sense of self. And we sit there in this place of apathy and self-pity. And even when someone comes along and asks us what we want, we don't even know how to answer the question, because Jesus came to him and said, do you want to get well? And the guy's like, he doesn't even respond to the question. He's just like, he makes all of these excuses. Well, when the water stirred, no one's here to get me down into the water, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, and it's just this like pathetic response. And Jesus still goes ahead and heals him. Take up your mat and walk. And so the guy just gets up, takes up his mat. You don't see any joy expressed. I don't think there's any joy expressed in the thing. It's just that he gets up and takes his mat. And then he's confronted by the religious leaders, and he turns Jesus into them and says, I don't know who healed me, because it's like he's just existing in this lump of experience.
What do you feel like drives that way of thinking? Like what do you think like drives that for people?
I think it's probably conditioned over time of just incredible despair, where we have no agency, or we have no sense of self, or we have no sense that anything that we do will fundamentally make a difference. And that when we try, it always fails. It just never goes my way. It never gets me the distance. It's like he's saying, I try to get down in the water because the water will heal me, but I can't. There's nobody here to help me. And it's like, it's a man who has lost all sense of hope, and he doesn't even recognize when real hope comes. It's like he wasn't able to be activated into hope. And I don't know what the long story is of this guy. Jesus heals him. He's now able to walk. I don't know if that was the impetus for change. And it's like he's been given a gift, and now he has an opportunity to let that be the seed around which change can come. There are many, many people who have been given lots of gifts in life where it could give them hope and give them a foundation from which they could change, where it's like the inertia was broken. The apathy can fade away because you've just been given a resource. You've just been given something. And for people in that condition, this is a critical moment. Will you change your mind? Will you change your way of thinking? Will you change your attitude? And will you take this resource and be responsible with it? Will you take it and put it to work? Will you let it produce the hope that will lead you to a much, much deeper kind of change? And it's like blind Bartimaeus, like the attitude and the disposition and they're both in a pretty bad condition. Like you go back to the 2nd century time. It's like, or 1st century, I guess would be.
Right.
It's like you go back into that cultural time period. To be blind or to be lame, I'm not sure that there's a qualitative difference in how you're going to experience life. And
you're exclusively dependent upon the generosity of the people around you.
Right. And I don't know if
you.
one may have had resources that help generate hope. I don't know those. That's
Sure.
But we do see. I would say I do see those two different characters in suffering. Like you see people in those two different kinds of spaces, and if people are in that apathetic space, it's like I've had people come into my office who are very hopeless and very distraught and very sense of that I have no agency. There's nothing that I do matters. Nothing that I do works. I'm helpless and I'm hopeless and there's nothing I can do about it. And I remember one time saying to someone, I know that you don't have any hope, but I would like to lend you some of mine interest free. Like, will you just accept some of my hope and keep engaging with me and just like borrow my hope for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, some people are able to do that. Some people just don't seem to ever get over that kind of hump. It's like, there's this persistent ongoing apathy of nothing that I do matters. Nothing that I do will change my circumstances. Nothing, there is no hope. And well, then what do you do? The only thing the way you can do to get what you want is to lay on your mat and put out your cup for people to pity you and put a quarter in it. And you just are going to lay there and let people witness your misery, and hopefully they might give you something. Mm-hmm. And they won't give you what you really want. They'll give you what will keep you in the very condition that you're in. And it's like, Jesus didn't come along and give him money, because money would have just been another way in keeping him stuck. Jesus came and gave him hope and gave him an opportunity now to leverage that. Apathetic people will tend to just stay in that space. And it's hard to have hope, because to hope to get off that mat means that again, this goes back to that sense of what we ask for, we got to ask for the consequences. For him to get well was a brutal reality for him. He doesn't have a job. No one's going to put money in his cup if he can walk. It's like Jesus took away from him his ability to survive in the condition that he was in. And whether or not he leans into the resources and actually gets well, my optimism would be that was the impetus to begin putting together his life in a meaningful way and getting what he wants. But I don't know. The Bible doesn't say. Now, I know the story. For me, whenever I read it, I find the story depressing. I'm like, there's no evidence of real change or that this guy is any better than he was before. It's just he's upright.
Yeah.
Versus and we all have that becomes we can almost think about, like, in what ways is that true in our lives? Like, sometimes I like to think, well, that's not me. And then I'm like, well, there's probably fragments of my life that is that. There's probably parts of me that have that condition. And all three of the stories we'll talk about today, it's like we all have all three of them in some dimensions of our life. And so in what ways are you apathetic? In what ways are you just kind of, I'm done. I don't have nothing to offer. So please just enable me. Please just give me what I need to keep me in the condition I'm in so that I just survive. And it's like, if we're in that condition, we need hope. We need something to come along to wake us up and be like, no, there is something around which we can grab onto and have hope again. And I want my life to be one that can inspire people to hope again. But to hope is to want the consequences. So if you want to get well, that means you're going to have to actually do the work. You're going to have to go back to work. It's going to require something of you.
That's really good. Should we look at the
third story?
One? Yeah.
So the other way I think we get what we want, and this is probably the most egregious way in which we get what we want, is demanding, manipulation, control. The book of Leviticus in the Old Testament law has these commands of do not cheat, do not steal, and do not lie. And it's like these three processes are all forms of demands. It's like, I want what I want, and I'm going to have it, hook or crook. Like, I am taking what I want. I'm getting mine, and it's my right, and I'm entitled, and I don't care who I have to step on.
Yeah.
I am going to have what I want. And there's a part of all of us that has this quality of, I want what I want. We see it in the story.
Learn how to do it more subtly and quietly, not
more socially acceptable,
yeah,
more social acceptance. And so to be demanding, I think the story in the New Testament that captures this is the story of the prodigal son, of, Dad, give me my share of the inheritance. It's mine. I'm entitled to it. You're going to die anyway, so just give it to me now. And he takes it, and he goes off, and he thinks he knows what he wants. And he is completely ungrounded to any kind of future consequence, any kind of future risk. And he severs himself from his community. He severs himself from life-giving sources, and he takes his wealth, and he just lets his appetites run wild. And so here's a guy who's sex addicted. He's chemically addicted. He buys his friends. He is living a pretty wretched existence, but it doesn't look wretched at first. It's a pretty sweet gig. It's a pretty, it's like, in terms of appetites, I got what I want. I'm succeeding because I have what I want. And there is no shortage of people in our culture who have what they think they want. And they've lived lives, decades, years and years, having what they want. And they've got it through their demanding approach to life. Because demanding kind of works. It works until it doesn't. And so we see in this story the demanding element yielding to, and then the famine strikes. And you find out that you have squandered every resource, every relationship, everything has been squandered, and you are in the pig pen of life. Life is kicking your butt so hard. It has knocked you down flat and is beating the crap out of you, and you can't get back up. And you would love to be able to eat what wild animals or what disgusting animals are eating in the pig slop. And you can't even have that. And it's like, that's where demanding gets you. And so again, this comes back to clarifying, what is it that the prodigal son really wanted? He never thought that through. He never did the work of really establishing that. And so he thinks he knows what he wants when he returns back home. Well, I want to have a full belly. I want to survive. So I'll go back and I will once again tell my dad what to do. I will tell him to make me a servant. Again, it's like he kind of repents, but not really. He's still demanding. He's still saying, yep, what I was doing wasn't working out very well, and I'm not doing good. Now, make me your servant. It's like he still doesn't come back with a sense of humility. And the father in his graciousness says, no, I will not make you my servant. I am going to transform you back into my son. Like you will be my son. And you will, like, I want to help you learn how to be a son so that you can have what it is that you really, really want. And because the son didn't know what he wanted. He knew what his appetites were. And I think like that captures probably more of us than any. It's like we demand out of life. We demand from our spouse. We demand from our children. We demand from our parents. We demand from our jobs. We demand from our technology. We demand to consume on our own lusts, to take our own appetites, and I am going to have them satisfied. And the demanding approach to life leaves us in due time decimated and in the pig pen. And that can just be like a dissatisfying marriage. It doesn't, like, there's degrees. It's like there's a spectrum of chaos that we can unleash on ourselves. But ultimately, we can be in that pig pen. And in many regards, we all are in the pig pen to some degree. It's like, again, it's a story that we can see ourselves in pretty easily. And we can see it as an effort to try to get what we want going amok. And so I think that's probably my answer of how do we get what we want. We get it through one of those three methods. Ultimately, to get what we want, we have to ask.
Yeah.
Like that's where the truest level of receiving what we need, what we want happens. But we try those other two approaches of apathy and demand in some sick and twisted combination between those two things. We are almost all of us will find places of apathy and that kind of resignation and of hopelessness, and that place of I'm strong and powerful and I'll demand and I'll get what I want the way I want it.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like, yeah, and kind of how I immediately ask, like, what if they say no, or someone says no to you? Like, that's ultimately what makes that the hardest of it but it lines up with what you're talking about with the idea of, like, asking implies, or knowing what you want implies you want the consequences as well, which forces you to think, long term, and that's what makes hearing a no so hard, is because that in the immediate means you don't get that thing you're looking towards. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's kind of a underlying, like, significance to this whole thing, is being willing to think through what do you want and the long-term implications that come with it in the long-term pursuit of receiving that thing. Mm-hmm. But so often, I know for myself, I'm just driven more by the, like, but this is what I want right now. Like, right. That's the hard thing you have to work through.
Well, and I would say that's what our appetites and our emotions are two very, very, they're God-given beautiful realities of our life. Like, I want my appetites to be healthy, and I want to have a robust and healthy emotional system that gives me a full range of emotion. But both my appetites and my emotional, those two things can serve me in helping motivate me and move me towards what I really want, or they can serve my demands or my apathy. And so our responsibility is to, and our minds as well, like the third component of that is how we think about things will reinforce these two dynamics. And so we have deep beliefs and we have deep ideas of how we should get what we want. And all of those things, it's like we need to bring them. Dallas Willard talks about bringing our lives into the kingdom of God. Is, in essence, the kingdom of God is the effective range of God's will. So it's like we want to bring ourselves fully under the umbrella of God's kingdom. And to be under the umbrella of God's kingdom is to live a life of asking. And asking is that willingness to accept a no, because we trust the goodness of God. And so what I really want is I want the range of God's will at work in my life, which means I want to be told no if God wants it to be a no. If it is a no, that's actually what I want.
Right.
So if I'm asked, I think I know what I want, and so I ask for it. I don't get it, and that means I actually want the no, because I'm bringing myself under the effective range of God's will. So now I trust the King. I trust God. I trust And there's times that the mercy of God will be there for us, whether we get what we want, whether we get our sight back or not. It's like blind Bartimaeus was bringing himself under the range of God's will. There were people that were not healed in the New Testament. There were people in Jesus' time that he didn't heal. There's people we know now that don't get healed. They die of cancer. They don't get well in the way we want. But the no to our request, ultimately, that needs to be our desire. Like, we want what it is that God chooses.
That's really good, and I want that to be my mindset for thinking those things through. And I think, immediately I think of I think most married people will think of this example, but let's say I ask to have sex with my wife, okay, and I want a deep, intimate relationship with my wife where I am really known by her and I really know her, right? And so I ask that question, but if it's a no, I should want that because for whatever reason that evening, that's what actually is more caring for her if it would be to not have sex,
Right. Sure.
And so, but that's not the way I frame that.
Right. It is
often.
It's very difficult.
Maybe I'm the only one, but
far from it. Like how many times do children respond well if they ask for a snack and they don't get it?
Right.
It's like our appetites will protest and try to assert themselves. Now, if we're wise, we will let the no inform. It's like I want my sexual relationship with my wife to be life-giving in such a way that I will work then to create the environment from which she will want to connect with me in that way as well. And so we begin, and when we do that mutually, when two people are both working in that direction, it's like the appetites can pull us towards creating an environment that helps us create what we really want, and the appetite is actually there to support that. And the emotion is there to support what we really want. And so our joy, our excitement, our sadness, our anger, our frustrations, our anxiety, all of those emotions can support actually moving us to what we really want.
Yeah.
We just usually just define what we want as the base appetite. So if I want sex, if I want food, that's what I want. It's like, no, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
I want I want that thing. I want the emotion, and I want the thoughts, and I want the appetites to all cooperate together to get what I really want. And that is oftentimes not the content of the appetite itself.
That's really good. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. I don't recognize that.
It's like in the moment.
Yeah.
It's like these are some of those areas where it's way easier to articulate or see that working. It's like having sat with hundreds and hundreds of different people listening to lots and lots of stories, things can start. I'm like, okay, I see that, but then I think sometimes it's in my office and I think that would be a really good thing for me to go home and try. Like I need to apply that to my life more effectively and deeper, because again, for me, it's the visualization is the umbrella of the kingdom of God is where I want to live underneath that. But I almost always have at least a toe or a finger outside of the effective range of God's will. There's parts of me that still need to be brought into the kingdom of God. And the more I can leverage the asking for what I need and accepting the no, and it's like as I do, the more I ask, the further I come under the kingdom of God. It's like the more I bring myself into that. And whenever I see these other two things show up, it's a good indicator, well, your arm and shoulder are outside of the kingdom, because the range of God's will is not there. And so many people are grappling with pornography, many people grappling with food addiction or other vices, other behaviors that are not optimal. It's like that part of them is outside of the range of God's will. And it's hard, but that's our task. That's the opportunity we have. And I want to help inspire people to make movement into a much healthier way of living.
That's good. Okay, so quick summary of what we're talking about. How to get what you want. Big primary thing is actually thinking through what it is that you really want, like thinking beyond the appetites to what is the real thing that you really want. Having clarity of that is a significant help. And the biggest one, well, you have three options. You can ask, you can utilize apathy or pity, or you can demand. And ask being the most appropriate one, but the hardest because you have to be willing to accept a no. But when you're actually addressing the thing that you want, oftentimes that no is probably still going to work towards the thing that you really want in the first place.
The deepest thing that we want will be facilitated by the no's that we receive in life.
That's good.
And poof. That's a hard truth.
Well, that is hard.
It's a hard truth, but we gotta. It's like, it's almost like deal with it. It's like that's welcome to life. But great. So look forward to next time around. But thank you all for listening, and feel free to reach out if you have thoughts or questions. And in the show notes, you'll find a link to my website. And appreciate you joining us. And if you like what you're hearing, share it with your friends, and I'd be grateful.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Dr. Tim Stauffer podcast. If you're finding this podcast beneficial, please share it with a friend or leave us a review. Don't forget to check out the show notes where you'll find links to resources and an email address. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, feedback, and topic ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening.